Hello everyone, kia ora, bulavanaka, talofa lava, hello, kia orana, hello oketa, and a very warm welcome to another Business Link Pacific webinar, Using Lean Efficiency in Your Business. Thank you so much for joining us today from wherever you are connecting with us. If you haven't already done so, please take a moment to do the short survey. The link to this is posted into the chat box, which is in the top right-hand corner of your screen. All your answers will be anonymous, but they will help inform our webinar presenter with her discussion points today, and we'll be sharing those survey results during the course of the webinar. Before we get started, I just want to make a couple of introductions and go over a few housekeeping points with you. For the duration of the webinar, please keep your microphone and your camera on mute. That just helps everybody have a very clear feed of our presenter today without any interruptions. If you need to leave partway through, that's not a problem. We are recording today's webinar and we'll send a copy of that out to you after the webinar is completed. We'll be doing two Q&A sessions today. One will be about midway through. So as our presenter is presenting, I do encourage you to pop your questions into the chat box, and I'll put those to her in the first Q&A session, and then we'll have another Q&A session at the end of her presentation, so you can ask her some more questions then as well. If possible, please do tell us your name and which organisation or business you are from. And if we do happen to run out of time for questions, we will make a note of your question and email you privately with the answer after the webinar. So I can see there's a few regular webinar attendees here today, so you've probably heard this summary several times already, but for those of you who have just recently joined the BLP network, either as a growing SME or a business advisor in Pacific Islands, here's just a really quick refresher of what Business Link Pacific is all about. We are a New Zealand government-funded private sector development initiative delivered by DT Global. We're currently working in 6 countries, Samoa, Fiji, Vanuatu, Papua New Guinea, and more recently, the Solomon Islands and the Cook Islands. We work in partnership in each of these countries with financial institutions, chambers of commerce, and the private sector. And our main objective is to develop a business advisory service provider network in the Pacific region that improves access of business services to growing businesses. So we achieve all of this by offering 3 main services. And since Business Link Pacific launched in 2017, our services have been developed and tailored to suit the Pacific business sector. So one of our first services is the Business Health Check. That's a free online tool which helps businesses identify where there might be some gaps in their business that could benefit from business advice. We also have a more comprehensive business diagnostic, and this is carried out by our in-country representatives, which is along the same lines of detecting potential problem areas. We've just released a new Business Continuity Planner, which is another one of our free online tools, and that also helps identify areas that could benefit from business advice with categories that are specifically around business continuity planning. We have a searchable and growing database of over 60 Business Link Pacific approved business advisors. All of our advisors go through a quality assurance process to ensure their reliability, and this reduces the risk to SMEs when they're picking an advisor as well. And all of our business advisors get business mentoring and coaching by our business consultants. We have a subsidy scheme, and we offer 2 types of subsidies. The 50% subsidy, and in response to the recent and ongoing COVID-19 crisis, we released a 100% subsidy support package to help growing businesses who have been affected by the crisis. Our webinar presenter today is Barbara Wilkinson. She is our professional development advisor. Barbara has spent a number of years working in the Pacific on a range of business development projects. She has lived in Tonga and the Solomon Islands and worked in many different Pacific islands. Prior to this, she was the CEO of an industry training organisation in New Zealand, and in that role, she supported many manufacturing companies to implement lean programs and enable their staff to achieve qualifications associated with lean, which is the topic that she'll be talking about today. Barbara runs our Business Advisor Development Program, and she supports our business advisors to develop their employees' skills and ensure that they have the right systems in place to optimize performance. So she is here today to present to you on the topic of using lean efficiency in your business, a concept that you may or may not be familiar with, but one that can greatly improve your business operations and in turn business growth. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Anusha, and thank you very much for that nice introduction. Kia ora and greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this webinar on lean. And it's a real pleasure for me to be here to share some lean concepts with you. My experience of lean dates back to when I worked in the plastics manufacturing and food processing sectors. As Anusha mentioned, I led an industry training organisation, and we supported many manufacturing clients with the implementation of lean programs. And that was through our competitive manufacturing qualifications, as we called them in New Zealand. But, you know, whilst we did that in the manufacturing sector, I would like to just emphasise that lean is also really relevant for businesses in the service sector. Now, I get quite excited about lean because I've seen from my own experience just how capable it is of transforming a business. From my own perspective, though, none of it is rocket science, I don't think. It can often sound quite complex, but really the principles are very straightforward. The main challenge, though, is about staying focused and being disciplined. And that's really so that the benefits are long-lasting. So today's webinar is really just a very brief overview of a few lean concepts, which I hope may get you thinking about how you can increase efficiencies in your business. Before I start, though, perhaps we can just have a little look at the poll. Anusha, perhaps if you could just let us know what the results of the poll were and how many people are familiar with some of the concepts. That would be really helpful. So I'll just hand back to you for a moment, Anusha.
Sure, thanks, Barbara. We've had 8 responses so far to the survey. If you haven't had a chance to fill it in, the link to it is in the chat box. But in the meantime, I'll just share with you quickly. We've got a range of people. We've got 4 people in from Fiji today. We've got 8 responses so far. So 4 from Fiji, 2 from Vanuatu, 1 from the Solomon Islands, and 1 from New Zealand. In response to the second question, are you familiar with any of the following lean concepts? It looks like people are most familiar with total quality management. And then straight after that, it's Six Sigma. And there's quite a few people out of the 8 responses, 4 have said none of the above. Have you implemented any of these lean programs in a business where you've worked? If so, which one? And again, it's total quality management followed by Six Sigma. And then finally, how would you rate your business in terms of having efficient systems? 40% have said, and I can't actually see, I think it's about a middle road. They've rated it as 4, so quite efficient.
Oh, that sounds great. Thank you for doing that, everyone. Okay, so let me just present my screen and we'll make a start. All right, so just checking. Anusha, can you just give me the thumbs up for that one, or can you see my screen?
Yes, all good.
Fantastic. Okay. All right, let's get going then. So hang on a second, let me try and get going. Where are we? Okie dokie. So today, these are the things that I want to cover. So very briefly, because as I say, you know, lean can be quite full on. We're going to go over the lean concepts very quickly. And really, I want to share with you a few programs as well, but just list them so that if you are interested, you can go and explore them further, because there's quite a lot of different names that we've come across there already, you'll have seen from the poll. I'd then like to talk about waste and the different types of waste in business. And then I'm going to share with you a brief overview of the 5S program. And then finally, we'll just have a look at some visuals, visual examples of lean in practice as a way to demonstrate what it's all about. Okay, so firstly then, let's have a look at what lean is all about. So lean is first and foremost, it's about understanding what your customer's perspective on value is, and then working to deliver that in the most efficient way. So it's not necessarily about making life easier for yourself, but it is about making your customers' experience better. So in today's environment, with all the technology that we have around us, I still often see companies making the mistake of forgetting their customers' perspective. A recent example for me is my gym, Les Mills. You know, they very generously offered me an online subscription to the Les Mills On Demand during COVID-19 lockdown. And, you know, that was great. But I had to do the signing up as a new member. I had to give them my credit card details. And then a month now down the track, I find that I've been charged for a membership that I never asked for in the first place. And now it's my responsibility to opt out if I don't want to continue paying. So whilst the thought was really nice, and I was really grateful to be offered that, I do feel a little bit grumpy that now I've got the job of opting out. So this is what I mean by, you know, sometimes these efficiencies are unfriendly in terms of customer service. You know, that wasn't a great thing from a customer's point of view. Great from their point of view, you know, getting people to opt out rather than opt in, but not from my point of view as a customer. So the first principle of lean is all about value from your customer's perspective. Okay. So in order to deliver value in the most efficient way, you need to really understand your processes or your value streams. So you need to identify what adds value and what doesn't really add value to your process from the customer's point of view, and then eliminate all of those things that don't add value. So that's the second area here, about identifying and mapping the stream. So this is where you really need to be able to get to the root cause of what's going on, root cause of problems, identify bottlenecks in the system, and really think about the best design for processing your work. And again, from the customer's point of view. So there are a range of terms and concepts that I'm sure you've come across before that relate to this part of the lean methodology. So things like value stream mapping, the value chain, theory of constraints, root cause analysis, and many other problem-solving tools and techniques. They can all be applied at this stage of the process to help you to really get to the heart of what the issue is, and to help you to work out the best process design for your work. So that's really important. So that's the second kind of key principle of lean. Then the third principle is, of course, getting rid of those things that don't add value, the wastes in the system. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what we mean by waste shortly. So another key theme in lean is about the customer pull. So what do we mean by that? Well, it really relates to your customer's demand for your product or service, and you being able to respond proactively to that demand. So this is where concepts like just in time or Kanban, if you've heard of that Japanese term, that's scheduling, keeping minimal inventory, that's where they all come in, which we'll touch on shortly as well. And then the fifth key principle of lean that I want to highlight today is really about continuous improvement. So, you know, always striving for perfection. And so, you know, it's not a one-off process. And in fact, it's continuous forevermore, I'm afraid to say. But that's probably the part of the whole process that trips people up the most. You know, you've got to sustain it. Otherwise, you won't see those benefits last, of course. So those are the core fundamentals, the core 5 fundamentals of lean. And as you can see, it's all about maximizing value from the customer's perspective. I'd actually find it quite interesting to study the history behind lean, because of course the lean methodology in itself, it's been continuously improved and evolved into a number of different programs that we have today. And clearly some of you have heard of those, and some of you have applied those, so that's great. Briefly though, these concepts, as I'm sure you know, they all originated in the car manufacturing or the assembly line processes that date back to the days of Henry Ford actually, and Frederick Taylor, you know, engineer from America, and more significantly, and most significantly, the Toyota production systems of the 1930s. And so then many of the lean programs that we have today, they've been evolved and they've got new names, and they've adjusted from there. But that's what it all stems back to. So what I'd like to do is just briefly list them, list some of those methodologies so that you can become familiar with some of the names, because there's quite a bit of Japanese names and language that's used in there, and obviously that's because of the history of the Japanese Toyota car factory. So firstly then, Six Sigma, some of you have heard of that. Six Sigma is a program which is really focused on the removal of defects. The name Six Sigma, well, it's of course a statistical term, and I won't try to explain it, but I wouldn't worry too much about what it means, but essentially it relates to the bell curve in statistics and standard deviations. It can get quite scientific about it in its measurement of success, but it's basically used to measure the number of defaults in a system. So if you're a Six Sigma business, then you could expect very little defects in your business. Six Sigma's got that belt system that you might find in judo and karate. So if you're a Six Sigma black belt, then you'd be a master in Six Sigma. As you can see from the notes there, it outlines the same processes as we've just covered in Lean, the same principles. Then, of course, you've got Kaizen, which is Japanese it basically means continuous improvement. Now, that was developed by Masaki Imai in the 1980s, and it has a main focus on the long-term view of the business. Ensuring respect for people is a key element of it, and, of course, getting rid of waste is part of that. Then, of course, you've got TQM, so that's William Edwards Deming, and again, it's about continuous improvement, eliminating defects, and all with a focus on the customer. 20 keys is yet another take on the Toyota way, of course, but perhaps this one is more of a checklist approach than the others. You've got 20 sort of things that you need to go through with that one. Then, of course, I've mentioned just in time. Just in time really relates to the customer pull part of the Lean process that I spoke about. So it was originally about inventory management. So rather than have inventory sitting on the shelves, you would produce things in line with your customer's demand or your customer's orders, so that you don't have excess stock sitting, deteriorating on shelves and not adding value. It can, of course, also be applied to the service sector in terms of how you prioritise tasks. Then there's 5S, and that's a very core Lean concept that these days is often thought of as really just housekeeping, or at least getting your house in order. But it's actually more than that, which we'll discuss shortly. Then you've got Kanban, so that's a scheduling system. Literally, it means a signboard. It means it means a billboard or signboard in Japanese, and so it's about making your schedule clear, simple, and visual. And then the last one I want to share with you is one called poker yoke. Always makes me laugh. Literally, it means mistake proofing. And firstly, it's about identifying where mistakes could happen and then trying to design them out of your system. So a good example of that is an electric plug. So where the shape of it means you can't put it in the socket the wrong way around and electrocute yourself, for example. Or similarly, a SIM card, which usually can only go one way in your phone, so that you know you've got it right. It's mistake proofing. So look, there's a very quick list of the 8 Lean concepts that I wanted to share with you, and obviously you can find out more about them if you Google them, or I'm very happy to answer questions, and of course you can contact me afterwards if you want to know more about them. Now, when I look at my slide, I can see that my slide is not at all lean, is it? It looks rather messy. So just to demonstrate the concept, this is what my slide should really look like if I'm going to be lean. So there you've got lots of white space. It's nice and uniform. It's clearly laid out and much easier to read. And so obviously, you know, there's a big communication piece that sits behind this as well. So, you know, being lean enables your communication too. So just to summarize that, you know, the overarching principles of all of these programs and concepts, and they are all interlinked, are these key things. So you need to deliver value from your customer's perspective. Okay, it's not about you, it's about your customer. Using the least amount of resources, including time, and being the most efficient you can be is one of the common themes. And of course, the journey of continuous improvement that never ends is also a common theme across all of these lean programs. So those are the overarching principles across those things. Okay, so let's now have a little look at what waste is from a lean perspective. So here you'll see we've got the acronym downtime, which I think captures the different wastes in business quite nicely. And on the right-hand side, you'll also see what waste looks like in a service type of business. So let's just go through them. So obviously, you know, the most obvious one is defects or errors, or incorrect information, or scrap. You know, that's all waste, isn't it? In a service organisation, it's perhaps more about mistakes. But obviously all lean concepts are focused on eliminating errors and mistakes. And of course, the poker yoke concept that I mentioned is about designing them completely out of the process, mistake proofing. Okay, the second one then is overproduction. So it's a waste when you produce more than what you need, or if you produce it before it's needed. So this is one of the key things, of course, in the just-in-time process that seeks to minimise. In a service business, perhaps it's more about duplication of effort or double handling, which can often happen if you don't have a clear process, of course. Then the third one you've got there is waiting. So it's a waste of time if you've got to wait for the next step in the process. So removing bottlenecks from the system is important, and that applies both to manufacturing and service businesses. Maybe it's about minimising delays. Then you've got non-utilisation. So, you know, it's a waste if you have assets sitting around not being utilised or not being used. And the same can be said for your staff, you know, if they're sitting around not doing what you need them to be doing, but particularly it's a waste if they've got talents that you're not using. So think about non-utilisation as being a key area of waste. Then, of course, you've got transportation. So obviously it's a waste if you've got to transport things from far away rather than close by. There's obviously an impact both on time and fuel costs in particular. Then inventory is considered a waste when you've got excessive material sitting around, whether that be raw materials or work in progress or WIPs or your finished product. So it's a waste if they're sitting around not being used for a period of time. And that also applies to a service business in some ways. So I think back to a certain government department that I was working with, who used to only order their stationery once a year. Now, as you can imagine, items were often overestimated or they were underestimated. So the department was always short of the stationery items that they needed, but then they had an absolute excess of other things that ended up taking up valuable space on that shelf. So, you know, that wasn't at all just in time. So even in a service sector, you've got some levels of inventory that you need to manage. Motion, very similar to transport, but perhaps more internal. So this is a waste if perhaps the layout of your factory or your office isn't streamlined. So it's a waste of effort, even if it's just people having to walk from one area to another or further than they need to. So this is really about making sure you have a logical layout that enables your work to flow in a streamlined way. So even if it's just having a table next to your photocopier so that you can staple, bind and laminate documents as soon as they come off the photocopier. And that, of course, will prevent, you know, pages from going missing or getting damaged. So, you know, motion is very much a waste if you've got extra things in there. And then the last waste is extra work or rework to correct defects. So that's, you know, obviously a waste. Again, in a service business, this could be caused through miscommunications or misunderstandings, or if people don't ask the right questions in the first place. So that's just a little bit of an overview of the 8 wastes from a lean perspective. So I'm just going to pause there for a moment, and Anusha, I'm going to hand back to you to see if there have been any questions coming in at that point.
Thanks, Barbara. We don't have any questions in here at the moment. If you do have any questions for Barbara, you can pop them into the chat box now and I can ask them to her. Or you may need a bit more thinking time and we can do another question. And oh, we do have one here. We can also do another question and answer session at the very end of the presentation as well. So we do have one here from Sandra. With non-utilization as a waste, I thought it was good practice to build redundancy into machinery.
That is a very good question. So you're absolutely right. You know, normally you would want to, if you buy a machine, you would want to build in some redundancy. So in other words, some spare capacity. That's what you're saying, isn't it? Around what that machine provides for you or does for you. So yeah, you're right, you want to build in some spare capacity, so that's kind of tantamount to non-utilization. But I think in this situation what we're talking about is there's no point in buying something if you don't use it at all. So yes, you need to think about your assets from a future point of view. I might not need certain functions now, but I may need it in the future. So yes, you build in that redundancy, but you know, if you're not going to use that asset at all, or you're really not sure if you're going to fully utilize it, then don't buy it. So that would be the simple answer to that. That's a really good question, and really, I get what you're saying about the redundancy. You do need to think, you need to future-proof stuff as well. So yeah, really important consideration. Thank you for that.
I have another question here from Amrita. She asks, what would be a few examples of waste in the service category?
So I guess really some of those that we saw there. So you've got 7 wastes of service in there. It's probably terminology, the same sorts of things from a service perspective, but maybe we might use a slightly different language. You know, as I was saying before, you know, overproduction in a manufacturing setting might be double handling, or you know, having to go through something twice in a service setting. So that's the same sorts of things, but maybe we might just use slightly different language around it for the service sector.
Great. Okay, so that's all the questions I have for the moment. If you do have any questions for Barbara, please pop them in the chat box, and we'll be breaking for another question session in about 25 minutes.
Cool. Thanks for that, Anusha. Okay, so next I want to talk about 5S. So the 5S approach to lean, I think, is a great starting point if you're new to lean. I like it. Yes, it's a lot about housekeeping, but I think it's great to get your house in order. A really good starting point if you're going to start on a lean journey. As I mentioned before, a lot of people make the mistake, though, of thinking it's just about housekeeping, when in actual fact, it's about housekeeping so that you can streamline your work, and that's the bit that often gets missed. So you're not just housekeeping or cleaning and tidying up for the sake of tidying up and cleaning. You're doing it so that you can streamline your work. That's often the key point that's missed. So just bear that in mind with this process. Okay, so 5S. What's 5S all about? Well, there's 5 S's, and we've been able to translate them from the Japanese into English and still manage to keep S's, so that's amazing. So the first S is sort, or seri in Japanese, and it's really about observing and thinking about what it is that you need to do in your work, what you need in your work, sorry, and then identifying what you don't need in your work and removing it. So yep, it's about removing the clutter. But it's also about being mindful of what you actually need, what you really need, not what you think you might need one day, but what you actually need. So in a factory setting, they use a red tag system, and they red tag things that they think might need to be removed so that they can see whether it gets used or not, and then it gets taken away. Now, I'm sure we can all think of you know, a place where we need to do this in our lives in general, and we certainly know for me it's perhaps my garden shed. It definitely needs red tagging, that's for sure. There's a bit of old timber and piping and, you know, half broken tools that have been there for years that I think, you know, one day it might come in handy, but actually I've never used them, well, not in the last 5 years anyway, and it's just taking up space that other more valuable items could actually be placed in. So, you know, my bike, it's sitting outside in the rain, and I've got this, you know, poxy old piece of pipe that's sitting in the shed. You know, how ridiculous is that? So this first step is not only about decluttering, but it's also about starting to think about the tools that you need and where they should live. So that's the first S in the 5S system, sort. Okay, second one is set in order, and it's about finding a place for everything. So seiton in Japanese. So making sure that everything that you need has got a home and it goes back home after you've finished using it. So this now is about starting to design the most streamlined layout for your work area as possible. So giving greater access to the things that you use the most. So I like to think about it in terms of prime real estate. So, you know, what's the prime real estate in my workspace? Well, it's anything in my arm's reach, you know, my top drawer, not the bottom drawer, the top drawer, and the area directly around my computer. Actually, I remember when I was a kid, my mum used to keep the biscuit tin that I went into every day. It was in a cupboard where you had to move a chair out so that you could get at the cupboard, and then you had to move a box from inside the cupboard to get to the biscuit tin. And I used to find it so frustrating that I'd have to do all this every time I wanted to have a biscuit. And come to think of it, maybe there's a reason that she made it so difficult to get at after all. But yeah, you know, making things that you use regularly, putting them in a place that that makes sense is what this is all about. Labeling is also a key feature of this part of the 5S system, so that anyone can find things easily. So it's about making your layout as intuitive and obvious as possible, because it saves time. So, you know, the other day my calculator, you know, I lost my calculator, couldn't find it, and I probably spent about 20 minutes looking for it because I didn't have a home for it, and kept putting it back in different places all the time. And so, yeah, it's waste of time looking for things. So on this picture, I quite like the shadow board idea that you can see for the cleaning tools. It's so easy to tell where things belong, and also if anything's missing. In 5S as well, it kind of encourages you to get things off the floor or get things off your desktop, your desk space, so that you can use that for your workflow. So, you know, removing things from there when you're not using it is one of the key principles too. So that's number 2, set in order, very important step in 5S. So the next S is shine, or saiso in Japanese, which is about keeping things clean. So working in a dirty mess can not only be unhygienic and potentially lead to harm, but it's also unproductive. And dirt would, of course, damage items and make them deteriorate quicker. So it can be a health and safety issue as well, of course. So keeping things clean can prevent defects, and it will give you a much more pleasant work environment to work in. So that's why it's included. 5S is not just about regular cleaning though, it's about deep cleaning. It's about getting things really truly clean and then keeping them that way. So the 4th S is standardize, or saiketsu in Japanese. And this one is all about ensuring consistency. So standard operating procedures, policies, manuals, handbooks, they're a great way to ensure people know how to perform certain tasks. However, all too often, companies, they don't follow their own procedures, and often those documents just become dusty old things that sit on a shelf where nobody reads them. So designing an efficient process is just one element of this S, of this standardized S, but communicating it, getting buy-in from your staff to adopt it, and then also enforcing it are also absolutely critical if you're going to achieve consistency and standards. So I quite like this this very simple poker yoke or mistake proofing idea that you can see in the image here for filing. So as you can see, if something's been misfiled, it's so easy to tell, not only because of the color coordinating that they've used, but also because of the diagonal line that's going to be out of sync. So I really like that idea. So now the last S in 5S is perhaps the most difficult, and this is sustain, or shitsuke as it is in Japanese. So this one here is really about how you keep your staff motivated to keep on keeping on, so keep following the 5S principles. So it's about keeping a culture of excellence going. It's about continuous improvement for sure. You know, it's all well and good going through these 5S's once, but then you've got to keep going. You've got to keep doing it. You've got to make sure that clutter doesn't creep in again. Make sure you don't let things get dirty, and make sure people always follow their procedures. And more importantly, as we mentioned right at the beginning, not let your 5S process actually get in the way of you adding value to your customer. So any continuous improvement initiative, it must include goals and measures so that people can see what's required and how well they're doing. So I think part of that whole sustained thing is about measuring your success and keeping new goals alive. So that's basically a very quick overview of the 5S system. I just want to share with you a few visuals. I hope they give you a bit of a sense as to what lean might look like in the workplace. So this first one here is a typical scene that you might see in a lean manufacturing organization. So often they designate a meeting area where people stand around. There's no board table here to sit around. It's all standing up with these display boards which are showing their progress. So, you know, how well have we done today? How well did we do yesterday? And it might be across various different performance measures that they're keeping track of. So they look at that on a regular basis. Here's a couple of before or after shots. So, you know, do you really need all those papers around you to do your work? Or perhaps you might be more productive if you remove some of those distractions. Next one here is a storage area, and again, you know, do you really need to keep all that junk, or perhaps you can get rid of it and create more space? This one's a good example of how a bit of cleaning can really make a difference. So as you can see, that machinery there, you know, it can't have been functioning that well in its rusty state that it was, but, you know, with a little bit of TLC, tender love and care, it's been shined up and brought back to life with a bit of paint and a bit of cleaning. So that's a good example. This one here is a Kanban idea that I used actually when I worked in a visitor information centre. So what we did here is in order to keep our brochures properly stocked, we positioned a really visible warning card when we were getting low on brochures so that we could easily see when that brochure needed replenishing. So that sort of diagonal stripy card was positioned with a label on it so that we could see when we're getting close to running out of that. Then we'd go and reorder, or we'd restock, or whatever. But we also tied a laminated copy of the front cover of a brochure to the rack so that we knew where each brochure belonged. So each had its own place that it kept the whole time. So that was quite a good, effective way of managing our brochures. Here's some poker yoke examples, or mistake proofing examples. So if you think about, you know, firstly in your car, automatic transition, you've got to put your foot on the brake in order to put it in gear. So that's to make sure that you don't go driving off without realizing it. A wash basin has got a drain at the top in case you leave the tap on and the plug in to prevent it overflowing. Similarly, the petrol pump, it automatically switches off when it's full to prevent overflow. And you've got color coordinated video player leads there so that you know which holes they go into. And a very simple but really effective dispenser, pill prescription dispenser. You know, you can see when you've taken today's medication or not, in case you forget. And lastly, the window envelope not only saves time writing the name and address on the envelope, but it also ensures that you send the right letter to the right person. So really simple examples of mistake proofing. 5S has got this taping thing going on for it. So it's great for manufacturing. The taping is about giving everything a place and keeping it in place. So as you can see in the manufacturing sector, that they've put tape around stuff, and that's great to show where things belong, especially when you've got forklifts, coming up and down. But perhaps it's a little bit overkill in the office environment. Does it really matter if my stapler's 2 inches away from where it's supposed to be? Let's not be overkill on this. It's it's not quite so important, but some people do take it to that extreme, and perhaps it's those of us that are a bit more obsessive compulsive. I don't know. And actually, I've got a short video to show you at the end of the session if you want to. It's optional, but it's just a little bit of a fun video that kind of explains the concepts, but it shows what happens when you get a bit carried away, let's say. So that's a wrap on that. A very quick overview of Lean. Are there any other questions?
Yes, we have one question here. Why is it best to work in a clutter-free environment, and is cleaning not procrastinating then?
Why is it best to work in a clutter-free environment? That's a good question. And sometimes I work in a cluttered environment, and I have to say that my brain does not work as well when I've got clutter around me, and so that would be the first point. So it's best to work in a clutter-free environment because A, you can focus on what you're doing. B, you can find things better. If you've got clutter all around you, you tend to use more time trying to find the things that you need. So that's one thing. It's more pleasant to work in an environment that is clear. So clear desk, clear mind helps you to concentrate on your task. So those are some of the things around that. Cleaning is cleaning, not procrastinating. Then yes, I must say sometimes when I've got lots to do, I find myself cleaning. That's a very good way of procrastinating. And you're right, and this is where you have to be really, really careful that you don't get too engrossed in your 5S system that you actually forget about the value-adding stuff that you're supposed to be doing for your customer. And that's what I was saying before. A lot of people, they go off on this tangent of 5S and forget what they're really there for, and that is about adding value to your customer from the customer's perspective. So you're absolutely right. So yes, it could be seen as procrastinating, but it's really about doing it to a level where you can work efficiently. So you can't work as efficiently when you've got clutter around you and you can't find things and you don't know where to look and you don't know where you are and your brain's all in a mess. So that would be that would be why it's best to work in a clutter-free environment. But thank you for that question. It's a good one.
Great, thanks, Barbara. Does anyone else have any questions for Barbara? We've got about 10 minutes left. If you'd like to know a bit more in detail about these lean efficiency concepts. Barbara, while we're waiting for some questions to come through, maybe you want to say a little bit about the type of professional advisory services that you offer that could possibly help our business advisors.
Sure. Well, I mean, as you know, I'm BLP's professional development advisor, and we have been offering our business advisor development program up to BASPs in the islands. That's been a face-to-face workshop style of delivery where there's a consulting skills workshop and there's a leadership skills workshop, but of course at the moment we're unable to deliver that, although we have done a couple of them online, which has gone okay, but my preference would be that we do it in person because it's very much a learning by discussing and by doing and joining our ideas together. All of these kinds of ideas, you know, if anybody wants more information on some of the things that are coming up in the webinars, then I'm very happy to field questions and provide more support. Also really happy to provide more support with BASPs around how they can be as efficient and as effective as they can. And I know, you know, certainly with some, I've helped with some of their policies, I've helped with some of their systems and processes, and also performance management with their staff, developing leadership, thinking about succession planning. So all of those types of things that impact your business and help you to be the best you can be. BLP is very supportive of supporting you with that. And that's obviously quite customized. It depends on what your needs are. So the key thing there really is to ask and see what we might be able to help you with. And I'm always very keen to assist where I can as well. Not just me, but the whole team's there as well, of course.
Awesome. It's great information to pass on to everybody, and I will provide Barbara's email address in our webinar recording email later today if you want to get in touch with her about anything in particular that she's talked about today. Barbara, do you need professional assistance to be lean or to get lean?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. So a lot of those programs that I spoke about in New Zealand, anyway, a lot of them are led by lean consultants, if you like, and actually businesses pay quite big money for them. And certainly, you know, when I was involved, we would have a number of lean program consultants that would be in a business for years on end, supporting them. You don't need professional assistance. You can do a bit of a read up, or, you know, if you follow some of those principles that I've outlined, you can do it yourself. But it does require focus and it does require discipline. And often what you might find is that you need somebody in your organization who's going to be your lean champion. So, you know, it's not rocket science, it's simple methodology, but you've got to be focused on the key stuff. So, you know, as I say, you know, don't forget what you come to work to do. You don't come to work to clean, you come to work to deliver value to your customer, and you've got to make sure that everybody is focused on that. So you don't need professional assistance, but it can help. But you know, you've also got to be careful if you're going to direct some of your money that way. Certainly from my experience, I know in New Zealand there's been a number of people that have made good money out of their lean programs. Companies have got great value out of it, but it can be quite costly. I think you know, there's probably one or two initiatives that are going on around the Pacific as well, and I'm very happy to highlight to people, you know, what they can do individually. But a bit of common sense, you know, that's really what it's all about at the end of the day. And as I say, keeping focused on the main reason that you go to work for. I think there's actually, I think the Young Entrepreneurs Council in Solomon Islands, they're embarking on, they're offering some programs around lean as well. So there's probably things like that happening around the Pacific. Your chambers of commerce may know more about those.
Fantastic. They're quite universal concepts, aren't they, Barbara? So they're not industry specific.
Not at all, not at all. No, and you'll see. Certainly, I know I've got a friend who works with our telecommunications company. You know, she's been employed as the internal lean champion for many years now, and because it's continuous improvement. She's got a full-time job doing it all the time. Hospitals, offices, councils, they're all doing it. So it's not just about manufacturing. That's where it started with Toyota, as I say, but you can see it in every line of business now, and it's great. It's great to see.
Okay, so if we don't have any more questions from anyone at the moment, we'll start wrapping up the webinar. If you do think of anything though, please send me an email to media@businesslinkpacific.com and I can pass your question on to Barbara. Barbara, thank you so much for sharing your specialised expertise with us today. This is your second go at presenting a webinar for us, and we really appreciate the time you've taken to share these concepts with us. They're very, very important and maybe a little bit underestimated as well in terms of how much of an impact it can have on business operations and in business growth. for those of you who are interested in having maybe a deeper look into this topic, especially for our business advisors as part of being part of the BLP network, you can book a consultation with Barbara as part of our professional development suite for our business advisors. So I'll provide her contact details in the email following this webinar. We'll be sending out the recording of this webinar later today. So if you had to shoot off for any reason, or there's someone else who you think will benefit from this webinar, please share this with them. We have all our webinar recordings on our website as well, and I'll provide that link for you later too. Barbara, do you have any final thoughts for our audience today before we wrap up?
Sure. Thanks, Anusha. Well, look, I think we've covered a lot of information in a very short space of time, and I certainly feel like I've rattled through it very quickly. But look, as I think you'll gather, lean is really, it's more a way of life, and it's a way of thinking and perhaps a mindset than it is a process. And as I say, you know, some people, they go crazy with it and they lose the whole meaning of what it's all about and get a bit obsessive compulsive about it. That's not what it's about. So, you know, do retain that focus on what you go to work for. Lean is about trying to make your work more efficient, more effective, more fun, safer, healthier, and just more pleasant all around. So as I mentioned before, I've got a short video clip that I'd like to invite you to stay online for, if you wish. It's just to finish off. It's about 4 minutes long, but I think it captures quite well what we've discussed, but in a fun way. No obligation, but I'm sure you'll enjoy it. No, that's it from me. I'll sign off and just say thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Thanks for the questions. Thank you, Anusha, for moderating this, and no, it's been great. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Barbara. We will have another webinar next week, same time, Thursday, the 18th of June, at 2 p.m. New Zealand time, and this one will be hosted by one of our business advisors in Papua New Guinea, Julianne Terry, who is the owner of Toxstret Consulting. And she will be presenting a webinar on COVID-19 business challenges in PNG, a Toxstret Consulting case study. So we do encourage you to join us again next week, and we'll be sending out the invite for that tomorrow. And yeah, thank you again so much for joining us. We'll see you again next time, same place next week. And just after this, I'm going to post up that video so you can keep watching. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Office 5S program.
I can hardly contain myself. This is going to be much better than our Office TQM initiative and the Office Six Sigma program, I'm sure.
Are you excited about our new Office 5S program?
I can hardly contain myself. This is going to be much better than our Office TQM initiative and the Office Six Sigma program, I'm sure. Woohoo, sign me up.
I'm glad you are excited.
Yes, I'm sure you can hear the excitement in my voice. Can I ask a question?
Normally no, but just this once. Go ahead.
Who told you to do 5S in the office?
Our consultant did.
And what does the consultant specialize in?
He teaches people how to do 5S.
Maybe you have heard this expression, when all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail.
The consultant says you must mark where your hammer goes in your workspace. It makes you more efficient. The best factor is do this.
Hello. This is an office. I don't have a hammer at my desk.
See, you would know the hammer is missing if you had a tape outline showing where the hammer and your other tools go.
No. But I'm a marketing specialist. I create marketing proposals. I do not have a hammer.
Then you can put tape around your computer, your monitor, your phone, your stapler, your coffee cup, your purse, your mouse, the tape, the staple remover, that book, and those paper clips.
Why would I have to put tape around my monitor?
So it does not get lost. We will always know where the monitor is. You will not waste time looking for it. Our office will be more efficient.
Has anyone in our office ever have a monitor go missing?
I don't know. You must do this. It is on my goals and objectives to implement 5S.
So I will open my desk drawer and put tape around each of my pens and pencils.
Ah. The consultant says there will be a strict limit of 2 pens per desk. Any more than 2 pens is waste. We must not waste money. We must be lean.
Do I have to put tape around my family photos?
I'm glad you asked. You are no longer allowed to personalize your workspace. We must be lean.
How is this helping me do a better job?
The consultant says it will.
Why?
He was very adamant about it.
Why?
He yelled and screamed a lot in Japanese.
How do you know he is right?
I'm sure he is right. We paid him a lot of money.
Look, it takes us 6 weeks to get a new proposal out to a client. Maybe we should work on fixing that, reducing the cycle time. Maybe we will get more clients. We can grow the business.
We must do 5S.
Do you even know what the 5 S's are?
The 5 S's are 5 words that start with S. They are straighten, salami, stopwatch, Sasquatch, and salmonella.
That doesn't sound right.
The words are all Japanese. We must learn them. We are a learning organization. Don't you want to learn?
I still don't understand how this will help.
The consultant said this was very important. We will do the 5 S's or maybe even 6.
Will this make the organization more effective?
Effectiveness is not one of the 5 S's. That starts with the letter E, so it is not important right now.
But isn't the jail of 5S to improve effectiveness?
Our lean consultant did not explain that to me. I only know that a successful 5S program is the first step. It is always the first step. Always.
Yikes. I need a cup of coffee.
You can find the coffee in the new 5S approved location. But I'm afraid that you can no longer drink the coffee at your desk. That would be a 5S violation.
Really? A 5S violation? Why?
You ask why a lot. I will sign you up for the 5 Whys Lean training.
But this is absurd.
You must follow the lean rules. Now I must go and fill out my 5S audit sheet. Goodbye.
Well, hello everyone. It's time to take a tour of FastCap. FastCap is located in Bellingham, Washington, just about 2 hours north of Seattle, up in a little tiny town called Ferndale, right on I-5. It's a beautiful place. We have about a 50,000 square foot facility. It's just really, really cool place to work. About 110 windows, lots of natural light everywhere coming in. We're going to take you inside. Now remember, it's simple. It's not fancy. So when you get inside, just a big overview. We got 3 big ass fans keeping everything cool and lots of natural light everywhere. When you walk in the front door, it's all stand up. We made all the desks out of our fast pipe system. Everything simple. Now people always say, well, do people like to stand up? We wouldn't have it any other way. Is it difficult to stand up? Sure, it takes a little time to get used to it, but we love it. Everything's on wheels. Everything's flexible, including the filing cabinets. Now this is looking from the office back into the shipping area, and from the shipping area back in towards the office. You notice there's no walls. This is our order desk, and it's all on wheels, and it's all color-coded based on the day of the week. So whatever day of the week is, the invoices are that color, so we can quickly tell whether or not we're behind or ahead, whether or not we have flow. When you look up on the wall, all the boxes that we ship in are all color-coded. So it's easy to identify what size box is the perfect size to ship in, and then when you need to find it, it's color-coded down below as well. All LED lights, all radiant heat. It's just an incredible place to work. So this is our grocery aisle, and right here is our shipping terminal. So 90% of all of our finished products are right here. We build the Kanbans every day, and everything's clearly done through visual controls and the last 5 digits of the UPC code. So if you want to know what's there, there's a picture of it right here, and all these labels have been made by us, and it just allows us to manage our daily picking. As you can see, Thomas is down here picking an order right now on a cart that we made, and it's just very simple. This one main aisle all the way down to the shipping terminal, and it's out the door. Our showroom, our conference room, very simple, stand up, no chairs, the meetings don't last very long. Our graphic design area, again, everything's stand up, everything's on wheels, everything's flexible. We want to be flexible because our needs are always changing. All our tools are carefully shadowed. We never search for anything, we never struggle, because the minute you struggle, you have waste.
Hi, I'm Graham and welcome to Graphics. This is the most magical cell in the whole building. We produce all our labels and inserts for over 700 products right here in this tiny cell that's this big. Back here we've got all our paper racks with the different labels we use. Over here we've got our computer where we developed a 6-step process where anyone can come off the street, follow the very basic steps and get the job done in 2 to 3 minutes. And then over here, if ever anybody runs out of paper, we've developed a very simple Kanban card system where